well if you're interested in learning more. You can also visit our website, historicmurrayfirst.org, to learn more as well and give us a donation. And we will be shortly looking to do a campaign to get a local historic district here in Murray as well. Currently, we only have a national historic district, which offers no protections for developers or anybody to come and demolish a building. A local historic district will. That will be a campaign we're going to start next year. So we are looking for volunteers to help us do some mailers and canvassing in neighborhoods. So if you'd like to volunteer, I have my business card here. You can take one of those and send me a message and we can coordinate volunteer help. So with all of that announcement said, I'm going to let Kathleen take over. Thanks, everyone. Oh, sorry. One last thing, I'm messing up the mic stuff. At the end of the lecture, we do have a giveaway. We have a really amazing art piece that our Vice President Rachel Moreau designed today. It is a paper art in a Prairie Style design, and it's a really beautiful piece of artwork. It is one of a kind. This is handmade piece of artwork, basically priceless. And we're going to be giving that away at the end of the lecture. So if you registered for the event, your name and email is on the list to be drawn. If you didn't register, just come see me at the back. I'll get you on the list to be part of that giveaway and make sure that you're entered. If you're online, put your email in the chat, your email and your name in the chat, and then I'll make sure you're on that list. Okay, now I'm done for real.
So the Prairie style of architecture is actually the only truly American style of architecture. It's the only style of architecture that was born and raised in the good old USA. Started in the Midwest. So we're gonna, other styles, Victorian, Gothic, Romanesque, Italianate, whatever, they all started elsewhere. So Prairie Style actually started in the US, in the Midwest, in Chicago. I want to give a thank you to Peter Goss for some of the information of this, Alan Barnett, who provided some slides, Rick McNeese, also the Frank Lloyd Wright slides, and Michael Mahaffey, who was the contractor who did my home. Prairie Style beginnings in Chicago. Prairie Style, or Prairie School, is an architectural style developed in Chicago by Frank Lloyd Wright and others. It was influenced by the architect Louis Sullivan, and its characteristics are horizontal lines. This is the main characteristic, horizontal lines. You'll see horizontal banding, which is the bricks, where some are set back and some are coming out. In fact, the mortar, they'll even sometimes put the mortar out to the edge on the ones that are horizontal, and in on the ones that are, that might be wrong. On the vertical ones, the mortar would be out. The horizontal ones, the mortar would be in. So you can see different kinds of banding. Also, there's often horizontal divisions. So the top of the banding, above the banding would be one color or one texture. Below the banding would be another color or texture. Patterns that repeat horizontally is another thing that you can see. And think about anything that repeats horizontally. So for example, in a skyscraper, windows repeat horizontally and vertically. But in Prairie Style, it's the big emphasis is on horizontal. You'll find low profile and hipped roof. Here's an example of a hipped roof. A hipped roof will have slants on all four sides and then a ridge at the top. Whereas a gabled roof that most people are familiar on have the triangles and the vertical on the end of the roof. So these are slanted on all four sides. Prairie Style will have wide overhanging eaves. There's often horizontal crown molding, and there's cantilevering, you can see. So that's all the horizontal stuff. There's also projecting porches, geometric designs or stylized motifs on the top of columns. There's rectangular blocking. So Frank Lloyd Wright, when he was young, he had this set of bricks, blocks. They were like what he played with, set of blocks. So you can see often in these Prairie Style buildings, they're like blocks. You can see how he's just building with blocks. They're very blocky. Masonry materials such as brick, stucco, and concrete. You very, very rarely see wood Prairie Style. Well, never in Chicago. There were often garden vases and vessels, and here's a very typical Frank Lloyd Wright vase, garden vase or garden vessel, whatever you call it. So we're going to start with Prairie Style in the Midwest. These are all Frank Lloyd Wright homes. One of the first ones he designed, in fact, he claims this was his first Prairie Style home, 1893. So what do we see here? That was those Prairie Style, the horizontal lines. We see the hip roof, the banding, the white band. The up is a different color than the down part. Everything emphasizes that horizontal feeling of it. You even see the vessels or vases of flowers. So the porch, it does, no, this one is not a porch. So this doesn't have and you won't see buildings that have every single style, but this has a lot of them. And this was the first one. But the porch isn't projecting really on this one. We'll get to it. Here's another, the Hurtley House in Oak Park, Illinois, 1902. You see, again, the horizontal lines, the hipped roof, the wide overhanging eaves, the banding on the brick. All these bricks are banding. And here, what you didn't see in the other one was that horizontal. The windows are in a repeating pattern horizontally. So these all are the Prairie Style. They would call it Prairie Style because a lot of them were low because of all the horizontalness. It reminded people of the prairie where things were low. In fact, they say hipped roofs are one of the best things or the safest roof for hurricanes and high winds. They're more stable than a gable roof is. Okay, Henderson House in Illinois, 1901. Again, you see horizontal lines. You see the caps on the different elements here. These caps here and the caps there, so that you're getting that horizontal feeling. The hipped roof. It's made out. This is a concrete or stucco, which is common with Prairie Style. Here's another one, again out of concrete or stucco. You see the horizontal lines. You see, the bands. Notice this one. I think you can see the horizontal crown molding here. Can you see this one right here? Underneath this, see how that's painted. It's a crown molding under there. That's horizontal in those wide eaves. So there's those wide eaves, and it adds to that horizontal thing you're trying to think. The wide eaves are also another thing that make it feel, more spread out, more horizontal. Here's the Roby House in Chicago. The rows of windows. The banding, there's the garden vase, the wide eaves, really wide eaves, the horizontal lines. Now here's the Buck House in Chicago, 1915. This is a later one. This still has the rows of windows, but it's not, you don't get that feeling of so much of the lowness. But this one, I like this one by Frank Lloyd Wright. It is a block. You can see how he's getting his blocks, puts these blocks in the middle. He puts some blocks out here. He puts some blocks standing on their ends this way. It's very blocking. You see some cantilevered elements where these things are coming out. This area is coming out. Cantilevered means it's extending out from the main base. This is the Unity Temple. So those were all residences. Now we're going to go to some of the religious or public buildings that Frank Lloyd Wright did. This is the Unity Temple, beautiful building. Again, notice the blockiness. You can see that blockiness. But here's where we see, and the rows of windows and the columns, those columns. And here's the motifs. Here's the motifs that are on the top of the column. Frank Lloyd Wright often used plants or flowers as motifs. And they're stylized. He's not trying to be realistic. This is a stylized plant, or sometimes it's wheat. They say wheat sheaves. So there's a close-up of it. Beautiful building. This is inside the building. And that, again, you can see the windows, the repeating pattern, and also those stylized motifs on the windows. You can see down here, this is these horizontal lines. Beautiful building, still standing. So that was in the Midwest. So how did Prairie Style then get to Utah? It started in Chicago. This is about the turn of the 19th century. So one idea of how it got to Utah might be this. We all know that the Continental Railroad was 1869 at Promontory Point, Utah. Do you see where it goes from Salt Lake City? Where does it go? Directly, right back to Chicago. Chicago was easier to get to, a lot closer than New York or Boston or Washington, D.C. So starting in the 1870s, that was one of the biggest influences in Utah. People could go back to Chicago. So the Transcontinental Railroad, Chicago was the major metropolis between Salt Lake City and the East Coast. People in Salt Lake knew about Chicago architects. For example, Louis Sullivan was commissioned to build the Dooley Building in Salt Lake and an adjoining hotel complex. At least 5 prominent Utah architects studied or apprenticed in the Midwest, including Taylor Woolley, who we talked about last lecture. Many Utahns went to Chicago for the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. This was to celebrate 400 years of Columbus discovering the Americas. So why did the Prairie Style grow and flourish in Utah? The arts and crafts movement contributed to the flourishing of the Prairie Style because they were so compatible. So often you'll see, usually in homes, you'll see the outside is done in a Prairie Style and the inside is very arts and crafts, because they were arts and crafts, if you know, came from England, the arts and crafts movement, as a counter to the Industrial Revolution, where everything was mechanized and everything was being mass produced, to get back to things that were produced by hand by craftspeople. The bungalow was popular in America, and the Prairie Style used the bungalow, and bungalows were designed in Prairie Style. There were also many homemaker magazines. There is a time of many magazines, arts and crafts magazines. They're just different magazines. There were catalogs, Sears catalog of homes you could buy. All the materials were all pre-cut, and they would send them on the train to your home. The last thing is that LDS architecture, you can start seeing Prairie Style being used in LDS architecture. architects that were designing a lot of the churches were designing them in Prairie style. In fact, it was almost like a little island of Prairie style was in Utah. People even started saying sometimes, oh, that's Mormon architecture, because they associated this style of architecture with Utah because it was so prevalent in Utah. If you know of the LDS temple in Alberta, Canada, that's Prairie style, as was the Hawaii and Arizona temples are all three Prairie style, and that they were all built in that same time period. So we're going to see some Prairie style in Utah, some examples. Here's a home up in the avenues. You see the banding in the brick on the bottom layer. You see the rows of windows. You see the cap on the banding at the top. You see the hipped roof. You see the wide overhanging eaves. Can you see that molding there underneath that on those eaves? It's that horizontal molding. What else did we forget? Anyways, so very Prairie style. Here's a house, 9th South, a couple of houses. They're both twins, actually. Again, even on the foundation, the horizontal lines, the banding in the brick, the horizontal cap there, the windows, the wide eaves, and there you can really see the crown molding. That can you see that? It doesn't feel like you can see very well. Can you see that? That crown molding is really prominent in that one, which is so typical of a Prairie style. Hip roof. Here's the other twin, same thing. You can see that crown molding. You can, anyways. Okay, here's another one. A stucco house. You can see the blocking. You can see the windows in repeating patterns, the horizontalness. And there's your garden vases. There's a close-up of the garden vase. So this is on H Street in Salt Lake City. It's not a whole bunch Prairie style, but you can see the wide eaves. And here, this little row of bricks makes that horizontal line. But here at the top of the columns, so you often see in just residences where in public buildings or churches, religious buildings, the motifs will be stylized, but this has just gone to a geometric. It's almost taken that plant motif and just compressed it into the very simplest line. This is also H Street. Again, the two colors, one on top, one on the bottom, the wide eaves, and on the chimney, that motif is very nice. The garden vases there. Here's on South Temple, same thing. Here's up in the Yale Harvard neighborhood. And now we finally have, you can see how those eaves are just very, very overhanging. Here's the first time that the first picture that I have that shows that porch. This is what I mean by a projecting porch. Do you see that the columns, normally columns would be at the corners of your porch, but this porch juts out from that. Here's another one. Look at the overhanging eaves, and then that porch juts out from the columns where you would normally have your columns on the corner of the porch, but these columns are back and the porch juts out. whoops. And this is the banding. You can see that banding too. And the geometric pattern, it's just a square now at the top of those columns. So I don't know why Frank Lloyd Wright did this, but look at the eaves. You normally in Prairie Style houses, the eaves are very wide, way wider than normal eaves. These are even accentuated because of that porch jutting out. That eave looks really like it's cantilevered. It's just really coming out there because of the way that porch is jutting out. So it really accentuates that. Okay, here's another one. The two colors, the rows of windows, the banding in this band. This is a concrete band, not a brick band here. But now this one, I believe this porch has been filled in with windows, but look at that column. That column is actually back and the porch is jutting out. Here's another one. The porch juts out, banding. This is up on 100 South. You can just walk. You just walk places and you see these. And now hopefully you can see on this one, you can see the crown molding. That's horizontal crown molding. You know what crown molding is. It's between the wall and the roof. They did it because nothing can be straight. And you could never get a wall to get up there so straight that it's going to match the roof. So then you put the molding on. It's pretty, and it also it's just pleasing to the eye to see that too. Okay, I just saw this one on 13th East one day. You can see the bottom foundation, then this pebble dash stucco, and then the band. Okay, so now here are some of the LDS churches that were built in Prairie Style. Isn't that beautiful? This has been demolished. Burton Ward in Salt Lake City. Here's Emigration Ward. Do you see the jutting out porch there? It's been demolished. 7th South and 10th East. This is up in the Avenues, Ensign Ward. It's been demolished. First Ward in Park State. And here, I actually have a picture of the architect's drawing. Pope and Burton. Do you see those motifs on the top of those columns? I mean, it looks as much like Unity Temple as about anything you could see. I mean, Prairie Style was really important because, like I say, it was the only American style of architecture, and actually went all over the world. Frank Lloyd Wright designed the Imperial Hotel in Japan. So this is an important style of our architecture. So be glad you're here learning about this really important thing. Here's the Ladies Literary Club on South Temple. This has now been repurposed for it's a club and an event space that parties and things you can hold there. This is some Ogden stuff. You can see those repeating patterns and the motifs at the top of those columns. Here's the School for the Deaf and the Blind, and the side view is even better. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Those repeating columns. This is the Deaf Branch in Ogden. This building is still standing. Look at those motifs at the top of the columns. And there's the side, the windows, and the motifs. Isn't that beautiful? I think that's a beautiful building. I really love that. This is the Ogden 13th Ward, and this building is also still standing. This is up on Eccles Avenue. Everything is here. You've got the two colors, you've got the banding, you've got the banding in the brick, then you've got the concrete band around it. You've got the little motifs at the top of here. These are done in tile. You've got the wide eaves, the rows of windows. Here's another one also on Eccles Avenue. Same thing. And your porch does jut out there a little bit. This is in Parowan. The design, notice the design motifs up on the top of those columns that are at either side of the doors. There it is again. And isn't that beautiful? That's on the doors. Again, that's that little plant or wheat motif sometimes. This is the Clinton Ward. This is 1910, so this is actually pretty, this is actually designed before the Unity Temple, but obviously people had gone to Chicago and seen these things. There it is again. This is the Mount Pleasant Public Library. Look at those wide overhanging eaves, and you can even see some crown molding that's horizontal. Those windows are very Prairie Style. These are what you would consider Prairie Style. People put them in their homes. They're trendy, so people put them in their homes, but they go best in a Prairie Style home. Here's Levan Ward. Okay, so after all those Utah examples, do we have any examples of Prairie Style in Murray? Yes.
The answer has.
Yes.
That was a B.
Okay, this is on 4800 South. The banding in the brick, the overhanging eaves, the hipped roof. This one even has more characteristics. Hipped roof, the overhanging eaves, you can see that horizontal crown molding very well in this one. You can see the motifs at the top of the columns. The porch is jutting out. And there's even some little vases here. So here's another one, the little geometric, just one little line, but you have to remember, you don't have a lot of money for someone to design something, but oh, you can just put that little line on your column to show it. This is Mr. Belliston's home right on Center Street. This is on Wasatch Street. The porch juts out. So, why is this Prairie Style important for me? Imagine you're going down Vine Street and you see this poor house. Now, maybe you really like old houses and you think that we should not demolish them, but you think this is one house that probably should be demolished. It's very ugly. It's falling apart. Nobody wants this. This is the ugly child that no one wants. But luckily, I have a brother that knows all about this, because you can see there's horizontal lines. It's a hipped roof. You can see the crown molding, the horizontal crown molding right up here. It's out of stucco. And actually, it's just painted all the same color here, but this is the foundation, and this is pebble dash stucco on the bottom. And this is just plain stucco on the top. So it has all these Prairie Style elements. So we found a contractor. And this is what it turned into. We tried to accentuate. I didn't do this because I really was clueless, but my brother told me how to do this. Accentuate the horizontal lines. So when you have a home, if you accentuate the parts that make it unique, that's going to make your home look the best. So Alan always used to say, you know, take it back to how it looked when it was first built. That will be your most harmonious home. It will be the most pleasing, and it will be the most authentic too, because that's when the architect knew what they were doing and designed your house to all work together as a whole. So in fact, you can see, oh, it's a later picture. I'll show you in a minute. So that's that halfway through the restoration. And this is how it was a few days ago. So here it is. Here's another picture. You can see the first thing we had to do was put on a new roof. What time is it, Joe?
It's almost 5 after 7.
Okay. Okay. So here is, we had to put on a new roof first. You can see the roof is bad. In fact, over here, look at those eaves. They're just a mess. The windows, we did have to replace the windows because these had already been replaced. You can tell these are the windows that open to the side like this. That was not original to the house. I think the bathroom window had been replaced. And in fact, on the other side of the house, I think these windows down, that window for sure had been replaced. So we had to replace these windows back. And it was always go back to what it was, because that's going to work the best with your house. That was always how it was. So we started with the roof and the eaves. And so here's a picture of us. I don't know why it always was late at night, because the guy was coming to do the eaves the next morning. And in fact, I had broken my arm up in the attic because we were trying to put those things to keep the air being able to flow through the eaves while we before we put insulation in. So I had broken my arm. So these are my two brothers who came and had to rip down these eaves, finish. I think we'd started, but that hadn't got too far. So, yeah, it was always late at night because or at night, because the guys are coming the next day to do the eaves. So, well, when they got there the next day, the contractor's like, we can just cover up this little piece of wood here. Do you see this? That's the crown molding. That's the horizontal crown molding. So can't we just cover that up or take it off? We're going to put they had to be stucco. Well, first my contractor said, we're going to use that wood. You know, you've seen it in the avenues. That houses just have this wood, this, what is that called? I can't. Beadboard. Yeah. The beadboard. You just put the beadboard in your eaves. They do it in the avenues. We'll just do it in your house. Like, no, this was originally stucco eaves. We had to go back to the stucco. So I even had a problem because Murray City, they didn't want me to do the stuccos. The stucco wasn't rated for outdoor. And my stucco guy, he says, he was one of these old guys that was still doing it the old way. I've been doing stucco for years and years and years. And no one's ever told me I can't do this. Anyhow, so we got it approved finally. Anyways, but they wanted to cover up my other he was the subcontractor. My other contractor says, can we just take that piece of wood off? I'm like, no, because that is part of my house that shows it's a Prairie Style house. Because in fact, when I tried to get this on or ask someone about getting it on the National Historic Register, they looked at it. That was before it got finished. It's like that on the National Historic Register, you've got to be kidding. There's nothing significant about that house. So I think things can look so bad. People say, oh, that is the ugliest thing. But when you see all these little elements and that little piece of wood, it had to stay. That just had to stay. So there it is. And it's been painted the same color as the trim. And so it's part of that Prairie Style. It makes my house unique. Okay, so next, the basement. I have to tell you, things always get worse before they get better. So they came and we had to demolish the basement because I wanted to dig. The basement was 6 feet 2. And people said to me, you don't want to dig out your basement. That'll be so expensive. You will never recoup the money for digging out that basement. That is too expensive. But all I could see, I had a vision and I could let nobody try to pour water on my vision because I thought in the years ahead, 20, 30 years, whatever, if you're selling the house, I can imagine people going, oh, I loved the upstairs. I loved this about the house. I love this house. But the basement, it was only 6 feet 2 inches in the basement. No matter what I did, that would be sitting around. That was going to make the house less likely to live into perpetuity, which is what I wanted. So this 6 foot 2 basement had to be fixed. So there's another picture. See, these windows had been replaced. Those are not 1920s. And it was always, what did they do in the 1920s? This house was built in 1921. It was always, what did they do in the 1920s? We have to go back to it. So we had to dig out to find out where the sewer was, because of course we had to dig a new sewer because we were going down 2 feet. Put a hole in the foundation and they put a little digger in. Did I bring the digger? Whoops. Don't want to show that yet. Okay. Yeah, so this was the hole in the foundation where they came and they dug. What they did first, we took out all the walls and then and then the whole house was standing on 2 posts. 2 posts. And then, I remember going to bed. We were living next door and waking up in the morning, looking out the window to make sure my house was still standing. I figure it had probably fallen down in the night because it was only on, the whole house was on 2 posts. So they dug down, then they made a false wall, dug down 3 feet, put footings in and put new posts. So there were 2 new posts that were down 3 feet lower than the original ones. So that's what the basement now looks like. It's really facing the same direction. It's just that same picture right there after it's all been dug down. That bookcase is in the place. It could be out there because it's in the same place where that hole was that they knocked in the foundation. If you know about these houses, the foundation, of course, only goes down to, it never considered having a basement. Then there was one room by the stairs. My grandfather, this is my great grandparents' home. My grandfather helped dig out and they had to, you can never dig under a foundation, right? That really, your house really will fall down. So you can't dig under the foundation, but they could dig right next, and they made a new foundation. So they actually took this foundation out, which is what my grandfather and great-grandfather had done. Because my mother actually lived in this house when she was born, in this basement. So they lived down there. We took out this one and they dug a new foundation. So there we go. So now let's go upstairs. This is how the stairs looked. There's 6 stairs up to the top floor. 6 stairs before we dug it out. Now there's 9 stairs. So yeah, it was pretty expensive to dig out this basement, but it made all the difference in the world for that house. You can't quantify the money because for one thing, the way we did this house was we sold our one house. We used to live up on the East Bench. We sold our home this was 9 years ago, for $300,000, and this home only cost a little bit over $100,000. But to me, I only have 10 minutes, 15 minutes. To me, I didn't need a bigger house. I just needed a nicer historic house. So that's how we got the money to do this. Okay, here's how the living room looked. Well, it's the dining room, actually. Then, remember, it always gets worse before it gets better. Here's all the kids stripping wallpaper. And if you want to know how to strip wallpaper, I will tell you, because I really got it down. What's the best way to strip wallpaper? Notice back here on the utility porch, I don't know what. The thing about when you're redoing your house, if you have a historic home, you could go to Home Depot and you can see, oh, this is what they're doing here. Or you can go to the library. I used to check out books from this library on historic bungalows, but all those books are gone now. They've gotten rid of those books at this library. All you can find out is how to build a new bungalow. Your new bungalow. Your house tells the most about what you want to do with it. I found all the answers to my house. They're written in my house. Like I said, that crown molding that was horizontal, it's right there. So we got all that wallpaper. I mean, some people just put on new wallpaper. I just wanted to do it right. I wanted to do it right. In fact, my contractor helped. I finally had to send my contractor home and say, okay, we're done, because he says, you've got to get this wallpaper off. It took me 6 months, took me and the boys and Joe 6 months to get this wallpaper off. But look what we found. There's ghost molding. A ghost molding is evidence that there was molding. There in the whole house, it had been taken off. So there's really advantages to find out what your house tells you. That house told me there was ghost molding there. There's the wallpaper. Can you see that wallpaper? There were 5 layers of wallpaper, and I tried to keep each layer. I have a little box of some of the wallpaper, but this was the lowest layer. Can you see that? I have a better picture here. There it is. That's the lowest layer of wallpaper. So when we ended up getting wallpaper again, because I wanted to get wallpaper, because that's would have been true to the house. That's the wallpaper I got so that I could kind of, that was it's not really Prairie Style, but it's what was on the house. So I kind of liked it. Okay, here's the rest. I mean, this house is nice. It's livable. When we bought the house, this is how it was. But do you see, all the woodwork's been painted. people said, don't try to get that paint off. But my vision, I just had to keep that vision. My vision was to get that paint off. And that, I have to say, that was like one of the worst things I ever did, was to get all this paint off. It took me a year and a half to do it. My father would come up from Provo once a week and help me. So here the carpet's out. See those bookcases there? The scallops, that is 50s. Those are what would have been put in the 50s. Remember, I had to take it back. I knew I had to take it back. There's me in my lead paint. I would always wear a lead paint mask and this stuff, because I would always leave it over there, and then I'd always go home. We lived next door in the house my mother, this is my mother. My mother let us live in her house next door so that we could do all this. There, stripping, this is the sit that I tried. There are different kinds. We use the really harsh methylene chloride. This is the citrus stuff. We also use the speed heater, the infrared stuff, all different ways. So if you want to know about that, sometime just ask me how to strip paint. I'm an expert at that too. So this is the finished house after finishing the floors and all that work. It just, it was popular in the 50s to paint everything white, but I knew I had to take it back. You can see, luckily, on the doors of the cabinets, they're not just bookshelves, there were doors which we found in the shed. One of them was broken. We replaced the glass. The hardware was still there. The knobs and the hinges were still there. Here's the kitchen. I want you to notice those little doors under the sink. Something's funky about that. Do you notice? So this is what I say. Your house will tell you things. Look at this baseboard. Why would they put a baseboard under the sink and then put a cupboard under the sink? Why would they do that? Because there actually was no cupboard here. The reason for the baseboard under the sink was because that you could see it from the room. So I knew I had to get a sink so that I could see that baseboard back there. So that's the finished kitchen. This is looking out to the utility porch. I'm almost done. We have 5 more minutes or something. This is looking on the utility porch. This utility porch is where they would have put the ice box. So at some point, they made this little box and put their fridge there. We took out that box, and then I was not true to my historic I decided I didn't want to go out into the hall, onto the porch every time I wanted to get something out of the fridge, because that's where it would have been. Your ice box would have been here. This was a doorway. This is a doorway, and you would go out there. So anyways, we opened that up and then put the fridge just right there. So the only thing that's really Prairie Style is we knew something was on the walls. It could have been beadboard, but we really didn't know what it was. It was gone. There was 50s tile on the walls up to this point, halfway. So we just painted it in 2 different colors and put a little banding here. And that's about the only thing inside the house that's actually Prairie Style. Here's the hall. Here's the hall. So in the front room, there is 3/4 thick oak, not just any oak, it's quarter sawn oak, the highest quality oak in the living room and dining room. But I'm almost sure there was a door here and back here that's just 3/8 inch lower quality. It's still oak, but it's lower quality on the floors.
Yeah, you're talking about flooring.
I'm talking about the floors. Now, the molding in the living room was all stained and varnished. Back here, the molding is done with shellac. So I brought some shellac so you can see, anybody wants to look at that. It's cheaper than stain and varnish, which is why they did it. So at first I was just going to stain everything a little bit different color. Then I thought, no, got to do that shellac. Shellac actually comes like from Southeast Asia. These bugs secrete it on trees. They scrape it off. And then you put it in denatured alcohol and put it on. So, okay, here's the bathroom. We had to take out the wall because the wall had been moved. We wanted to put them all back to where it was. Here's the new bathroom. There's the office. There's the new office. We didn't know what the crown molding was. It was in all the rooms. So we just had a simple, didn't know what it was like, but we knew it was there. There's the master bedroom. There's the new master room. And it took a long time to strip that paint off the windows, and the baseboards were the big paint stripping jobs. Took me almost 2 years to do that. Okay, so just in conclusion, do you see this porch? Kind of looks like a hotel or a motel, or some raunchy motel someplace. It's all painted white, everything. If you obscure the details of your home, then you're not getting the full advantage of how it was designed to be. So here, where your molding, your windows are painted a different. This was popular in the 50s. Everyone painted everything white. But that wasn't the 20s, and I knew I had to get back to the 20s. That was my that I knew would give me the right feel. So that's my story. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Well, how long did it take you to start from start to finish to complete that house?
From start to finish. So when we bought it in the summer. I mean, then it took us time to find a contractor. We had some contractors, they weren't going to build, dig out the basement for me, find a contractor. And then we had to draw plans for the basement, because the basement had to be done all new because we were digging down like that. So yeah, it took about over 4 years, almost 4. Yeah, over 4 years, almost 4.5 from when we bought it. Debbie?
Your garage also in the same style. You didn't really
Yeah,
show it, but
Yeah, the garage is in the same spot. The garage had been demolished. The garage had been demolished, so we but it was a frame garage. It wasn't stucco like the house. It was wood. So we redid it in wood. Hey, Rachel.
That original wallpaper that you found under there, did you have wallpaper made to match it, or did you find something that was already made that was close?
Yeah, I wanted to get some to match it because I know there are websites, but we did have a little of a budget, even though we went over it a lot. But no, I just found that. I happened to find that I thought that was pretty good.
What are some of your best finds, appliances that you found for matching?
Well, I do have to tell you, this refrigerator is from the 1940s, and it's been going all that time. It's 80 years old and it still works. We just found it online. Somebody was selling it. So
What
yeah,
about your
it-
stove?
it would have been no, I don't have a picture. I have a 1924 stove that we had restored.
Any last questions? All right, thanks, everyone.